How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Hartman, joined as always by my good friend, my co-host on the West Coast, Nick Normand. Nick, how you doing today, man?
Doing well today, Jack. My birthday came and went last week. Was super stoked to celebrate with some of my friends. We made some pizzas, went tide pooling, did a little beach walk. It was really nice. It was a really nice birthday, I would say. And just stoked to be back with you. We're in the prime of draft season. Free agency's coming next week. And man,
Mm-hmm.
like even though I do love the NFL season, this part of the off season, like I love this too because like team building, I think is so fun. If I could be an
Yeah,
NFL GM, I would love to be an NFL GM to just like build a team, figure out what schemes I want to run, and be able to get the players that fit those schemes and just like developing what that looks like, liking a physical linebacker or a big offensive line. Like you start getting a feel for what you like, what some of these teams like, and you're able to go from there. I think it's just awesome. How are you doing?
definitely. Yeah, I'm doing well. We're chugging along, with the still not really used to being a family of four now instead of a family of three, so we're doing what we can there. But yeah, no, really excited that we're at this time of the year. Free agency will be starting here soon. That'll be or the start of the new league year, which means free agency can begin. That'll be really cool. We've already seen, gotten some headlines and seen some stuff about some guys that are getting cut or trades that have already happened and stuff like that. And we will get into that stuff. But today we are doing a mock draft, a post combine mock draft between the two of us. Nick is taking all of the odd numbered picks. I'm taking all of the even numbered picks. And yeah, and we're doing it not what we think teams will do, but what we would do if we were the GMs in those scenarios. So we're excited. It's gonna be a ton of fun. And Nick, why don't you get us started with
Mm-hmm.
the Las Vegas Raiders and their first pick?
We're going to start that draft. Number one pick, of course, for the Las Vegas Raiders. We've known it for as long as the Raiders have had the number one pick. They need a quarterback. There's only one quarterback that we think is going to go up here. That's Fernando Mendoza. We can just hit this and move along.
Yeah, that's the easy one that we know is coming,
Mhm.
which gives me the Jets. There is not a quarterback that is uh, ready, in my opinion, at this spot. Everyone it was going to be this was going to be the Dante Moore pick. He's going back to Oregon. So when I look at the New York Jets, I look at a team that has actually done a rather good job recently putting their offensive line back together. I like their tackles. I mean, of course, almost all NFL teams could be better at the offensive line, but they're not in a place that they need to overdraft an offensive lineman with the second overall pick, in my opinion. What they are struggling with is having a presence up front on the defensive side of the football. And so with that, I'm going to go with David Bailey out of Texas Tech. I like his production and I like what he did last year, and I think that he's the right pick for them to give them a guy up front that can wreak some havoc.
Mhm. I like that. I like that for them. I think that David Bailey isn't as much a projection as he is what he currently is going to be a productive pass rusher, winning with speed around the edge. And the Jets, do you trust them to develop a dude, or do you trust them to just take a good player and win with that good player? I think it makes sense for him just right out the box, going to be able to win around the edge for sure.
Hmm.
The Cardinals, they have drafted a lot of these combo linebackers that are also edge rushers, like an Arvell Reese. I don't know with their new head coach if they would lean that way. I do think that edge or linebacker or offensive tackle are all on the board there for them. They do have Paris Johnson at left tackle. I think I'm going to lean Francis Mauigoa for right tackle for them, just so they have their bookend tackles and they're able to start building out that offensive line to be able to try and have a consistent run game, to be able to try and have protection for whatever quarterback they do bring in there after Kyler Murray, who is an imminent cut at this point. I'm going to
Hmm.
go with Francis Mauigoa.
Okay. I thought that you would probably go with the offensive line there, which means
Mm,
that a guy that I'm so glad is available here
mm,
is who I'm going to take for the Tennessee Titans. And so when I think about the Tennessee Titans and their new head coach Robert Saleh, I think about all of the success that he has had as a defensive coordinator. And one of the main things, one of the true stalwarts since he has been a defensive coordinator and had success in both his stints in San Francisco, is a guy by the name of Fred Warner. And having a linebacker, a true field general on the defensive side of the football that can control things and is very, very, very good at what he does. And so, because of that, I have the Tennessee Titans taking linebacker Sonny Styles out of Ohio State with the fourth
mm,
overall pick.
mm. Man, that kind of puts me in a little bit of a bind here for the Giants because if you would have gone with Reese, I would have loved Styles to the Giants here, actually. But Arvell Reese doesn't make as much sense for the Giants, who have a surplus of dudes at edge and at those like combo linebacker edge kind of spots. I really don't like what position you kind of put me in there. I don't I don't love here. I think that Scadaboo was good last year, but I don't think that they would lean in with Love at this point. I think it could actually be a good pick. I think Love's clearly rising up draft boards up to this point. His combine was incredible from all accounts, even though he didn't participate in everything. His interviews and everything shot him up boards.
Mhm.
Leaning towards one of these DBs, I think that Delane at corner is where I'm going to go. I just think that he's the cleanest
Okay.
corner prospect in this draft. I think that they've struggled at drafting corner with the corner out of Maryland that they missed on a couple of years ago. And I
Mhm.
think that having a corner behind that great defensive line is going to be able to create a really, really good defense from there on. Where if Sony Styles was there, I think that your front would be awesome. But with Mansour Delane, I think he's a really great fit for what they're trying to do.
Okay. Delane off the board early. That's interesting.
Mm,
I don't think I've seen a mock draft yet that has had him in the top 10, but also we're not doing most mock drafts are what we think teams will do, not what the person who's doing the mock draft would do, so that's where this is a little more fun for us,
mhm,
is we're not stuck in a box in that way. So that puts the Cleveland Browns on the clock. Again, quarterback is a need, but I'm not having them take Ty Simpson here. I think that would be a ridiculous, terrible thing to do.
mhm,
Wide receiver is what everyone's talking about, and then of course the offensive line. I think that this is a pretty deep wide receiver class, and so I'm looking at some of the offensive linemen that are there. I want a guy who's versatile. I want a guy who is good at one thing but could be good at many things. And so with that, I'm going to go with Spencer Fano out of Utah
mhm.
to Cleveland. You might say that's an overdraft, but also I've always been of the philosophy and mindset. Nick, you and I, we've had our little debates about this of if you get a guy who's really good and in a position that you need, then it's not an overdraft. That's always been my sort of philosophy
Mhm.
about that. So I'm going to have them take Spencer Fano.
Mhm. Arvell Reese being here at 7 is kind of ridiculous. I don't know that I've seen any draft that has Arvell Reese falling this far. I think that there are many spots that I could have seen him where I think you could have seen him at 4 or 6, depending on the way the board fell. But Arvell Reese being here at 7 to a Washington team that I legitimately think that this is a best player available outside a quarterback sort of team, where I think their offensive line you could draft for basically guard, tackle, center. I think their defense you could draft anybody. Corner would probably be the smallest need, but you could still draft a superstar corner if there was one. But Reese, I just think's the best player available here. I think that the slide stops. I think that this is just a best player available situation for Washington.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. It the more I think about it, the more crazy it is that they made the NFC Championship game 2 years ago with what their roster was and even more what it is now. Um, they definitely need to get younger and they definitely need to get a pass rush. That's obviously the right call. I think even if Reese is off the board, they're probably taking an edge, maybe a Ruben Bain in that spot, but definitely with the way this fell, with him being available there, makes the most sense. The New
Mhm.
Orleans Saints are going to take Jeremiah Love, and the New Orleans Saints are going to take
Mhm.
Jeremiah Love because uh, they need they need a succession plan with Alvin Kamara, and also because I look at Jeremiah Love as like a Debo Samuel back in his heyday with the Niners, how he was a running back and a wide receiver. And Jeremiah Love showed at Notre Dame over the last few years, and again at the combine with how great of a combine he had, that he has the skills to be a very good receiver as well as a very good running back. And I think that if you get a weapon like that for Tyler Shuck, who showed promise last year, like he might actually be able to do this thing. I think that's the most help that you can give him. Especially they took the offensive tackle last year early, so I don't think you want to make that decision again. So I'm going with Jeremiah Love for the Saints.
Mhm. That's a really good pick for them. I think their offense is going to start looking really fun at this point, where Olave, Jeremiah Love, and Shuck. And I really like their offensive line. It's really young and really, really improving the last couple of years. They've drafted really, really well between Banks and then the year before they drafted the tackle out of Oregon State. I just really like this offense and where it's going, considering the situation for New Orleans here.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Kansas City, I'm really stoked about the way this board broke. I think Ruben Bain being here at 9 is the best thing you could have asked for. Arvell Reese, if he could have gotten here, maybe like that would have been a better situation. I think that the pass rush is either I think all these players, as far as Bain, Reese, and Love being 7, 8, 9, all three of those dudes would have been awesome for Kansas City. And so I think that Kansas City, when they saw Fano go at 6, they're just like their mouths watering. They're like, we win this no matter what. There are 3 dudes and 3 picks here for us. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think Ruben Main's just an awesome pick for them. I think having another presence on the defensive line, where currently they have Chris Jones, of course, and then they have Karloftis, who's been a good player, not a great player. But I think if you have Chris Jones, Ruben Bain, and Karloftis, you just have 3/4 of your defensive line that you feel pretty darn good about. Even with Chris Jones getting older, I think for a singular season, you have 3 dudes that I think can all stop the run, can all rush the passer pretty darn well. And even though none of them may be superstars at this point in their career, I think that you feel really good about your defensive line with Ruben Bain being here in that spot.
Definitely, I think that's a good get for them. Looking at Cincinnati, Nick, when we watched the draft, when we did our draft live stream last year,
Mhm.
the thing that we said, and the thing that we said all the way prepping for the draft about Cincinnati, is they got one pick to be an offensive lineman, and every other pick had to be a defensive guy. And so we
Mhm.
get to their first round draft, and who do they choose? They choose the guy that I was very adamant about not drafting if you're anybody in the first round, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M.
Mhm.
And if you look at it, it did not work. So I think Cincinnati here, I think they're another team that if Bain is available, they definitely want him. You took him with Kansas City the pick before. So I'm looking at other places of need on the defensive side of the football where you're getting somebody who's a professional and who is experienced, and not just experienced, but is experienced with a lot of production. And with that, I have Cincinnati taking who some people think is the best, the best secondary player in the draft here, and that is Caleb Downs out of Ohio State.
Mhm.
They've even going back to the year that they made the Super Bowl, they've just always had issues in their secondary. And so getting a guy again, this is where people will be like, "Oh, well, that's pretty high for a safety." Highest it's been we've seen a safety go since Jamal Adams. It's like yes, but it's a position of need, and I think he's going to be true plug and play player right from the get go. I think it's the best thing that Cincinnati can do, and probably what they're hoping for is Caleb Downs being available at 10.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I I don't know that Cincinnati would make this pick because I don't trust their drafting, but I think this would be an awesome pick for them. I think that they've had a massive hole at any sort of DB spot since Jesse Bates left, and really having a difference making DB from game to game, I think will be huge. I think that they could use any defensive spot. They could use pass rush for sure, linebacker, corner. But to be able to get a prospect like Downs here at 10, who's just such a clean prospect, I think it's such a good pick. Man, none of the wide receivers have gone, Jack. Tate's here, Lemon's here, and all the way down, Tyson's still here. All three of these dudes, I think, are awesome players.
Definitely.
I think that they could all be dudes that Miami will be looking at. I don't know how we feel about this team given Tua potentially probably leaving. Like, we're pretty darn sure he's going to leave. But new head coach in Halfley, new schemes obviously with the offense, new scheme obviously with the defense. I think if I'm Halfley, I probably go with a really good defensive player that I think fits my scheme well, that I think I can go from there. I think Jermod McCoy, they have a massive hole at corner. I know that he was injured and didn't play at all this year. His tape was so good last year, and they have such a big hole at corner that I think that even at 11, even with some other good players on the board here, I think that he has a shot to be great at a place of need for them for a defensive coach. I think Jermod McCoy could be the pick here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the right call for them. Like, I mean, you talked about all of the receivers that they have there, and outside of Jalen Waddle, who do you love as a receiver on that team right now? And even him, you're like, he's a good wide receiver too, but not a guy that you want as your wide receiver one. But even still, you've got a defensive minded head coach coming in, first time head coach. He's going to want to get a guy that he can trust and can be his stalwart on the defensive side of the football. That takes us to the Dallas Cowboys, the ever interesting Dallas Cowboys. They've prioritized offensive line a good bit in the first round over recent years. They franchise tagged George Pickens. The fact that they franchise tagged him, they already have so much money wrapped up in Prescott and in CeeDee Lamb, does make you wonder, especially because of Jerry Jones' past of loving to draft high-profile offensive guys. It definitely makes you think about them maybe, uncorking the bottle of the wide receivers here in the first round. But I just don't think that you can do that, and I don't think that is the smartest decision. What I think the smartest decision for them would be prioritizing the middle of their defense, whether that's defensive line, linebacker, or safety. I see that Dylan Thiedemann is still there, but I think that one of the things about this team is how, for a long time, how bad the linebacker position has been with them. There was a long time that they had guys that were basically safeties playing linebacker, and their run defense was terrible. Then they moved Micah Parsons around a little bit, maybe kind of put him in a linebacker role more instead of edge, and then they trade him. I really, really like C.J. Allen, and so I'm going to have the Cowboys taking C.J. Allen here in the first round.
That's a great pick, Jack. That's the pick that I would have made with the way this board fell. There's just been a run on a lot of defensive players here where we had Love go, but outside of Love, it was Reese, Bain, Downs, McCoy, Allen. Like, man, I think Dallas would have loved to take a number of these other players, one of the edge rushers, I think. Maybe not safety. I just don't think this Dallas team prioritizes the safety position. But linebacker, I do think, is a spot that behind that bigger defensive line now, with them trading and acquiring 2 defensive tackles in the last calendar year, I think that Allen behind those defensive tackles for a dude who's able to run, able to cover a lot of space, able to stop the run. I think the run defense could be really, really good this year with that setup for sure. Looking at the board here for the Rams, they did just trade for Trent McDuffie. They do have a really good defensive line. Their offense feels pretty set to me in a lot of ways. If McCoy was here, honestly, I would have taken him even after McDuffie got traded to them. I just think
Mhm.
that McDuffie in the slot and then McCoy outside, like your defense could be really, really good. Could be a great defense, a top 5 defense, I think, at that point. But that doesn't happen. McCoy's not available. Carnell Tate, I don't think is their style of receiver. Monroe Freeling, I don't think that they would go with him at this point. Makai Lemon, I do think is going to be the pick here. I think that he's their kind of receiver. I do think he's a type of player with inside and outside versatility. I think that his yak ability, like a dude like Puka Nakua or Cooper Kupp in his heyday, fits exactly what they want. I think Devontae Adams, getting older, a player who can still play on the outside too, that it would just fit really well with what they like to do, be an all-in move. Given the way the board fell, I think it will be either right tackle or Lemon, and I don't think that there's a right tackle. If Maui Noah was here, I think that he will be an awesome pick, but he went very, very early, of course, to the Cardinals. So I'm going to go with Makai Lemon out of USC.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Well, then Baltimore is sitting here now
Mhm.
with Carnell Tate available, and I think they're running that card up.
Mm.
I think so. One of the things that we've seen about or during the Lamar Jackson during his time is just the lack of wide receiver production.
Mhm.
They sort of have a kind of stereotype of getting these guys that are like probably good wide receiver twos. And so, kind of like law of averages, if we have three wide receiver twos instead of one wide receiver one and one wide receiver three, they kind of balance each other out. But I think they need a guy. And I really, really like Carnell Tate. I think he and Zay Flowers together could do some really, really interesting stuff. Definitely get creative on the offensive side of the ball with, a lot of complex plays with crossing routes that are really utilizing both of their abilities to move across the field. And so I've got the Ravens taking Carnell Tate.
Man, Tate making it to 14. You don't see that often
That's
either. I think that's
surprising.
awesome. I'd be annoyed if, like, as a Steelers fan, I'd be annoyed if the Ravens got Carnell Tate. That would just be awesome for them. I think that if that were to happen, man, I'd be stoked if I was a Ravens fan.
Hmm.
Hmm. Let's dig down here and see if there's anybody that I'm rocking with. I think that it's just going to be pretty chalkish to me. I I don't think Kenyon Sadiq is the type of tight end that they would go for, even though I do think this is a range that we could start to see some hype for him. I don't think guard is something they would invest in at this point in time, or tackle, or safety. I don't think a year after they draft a receiver that they draft another one in the first round. I think this just sets up for Messidor. I don't know that he's the best player available. I don't know that he's a player that I would love drafting for my team. But I think that for this Bucks team, they need a pass rusher. They need a dude who's going to be able to set the edge. Low moving cost, stays Miami, stays in Florida. I just think that the way this board fell, that it just kind of makes the most sense with their needs to be able to go with Messidor here.
All right, and so now we're back to the Jets. I get to make two draft picks for the Jets. Um, like we talked about, they earlier before I had them take David Bailey. I like where their offensive line is at for now. They've franchise tagged Brees Hall. There isn't a quarterback that I feel comfortable taking this high. To me, I think Fernando Mendoza is the only true first round caliber quarterback in this draft. Um, I think in the right system with the right time, Ty Simpson could be good, but I don't know how I feel about a guy with those parameters drafting in the first round.
Mhm.
Um, so we're again looking at the Jets, looking at the defensive side of the ball. Uh, I mean, maybe if Tate
Mm,
or Lemon were here, maybe I'd think about doing wide receiver, but they aren't, and I don't know with Jordan Tyson's injury history how I feel about
mm,
him this high. So looking at the defense and looking at some of the guys who are available, we already prioritized the front of the defense. Let's prioritize the back end here with this pick. They traded Sauce Gardner in the offseason, or not in the offseason, excuse me, during the regular season. Um, so I'm going to have him go with Dylan Thieneman. I know that he's a safety, not a corner, but still, he's a really, really good football player. Has a lot of experience and gets your whole defensive secondary better than you are right now without him.
mhm. I, hmm, man, I'm curious. You're obviously the Lions fan on this podcast. When I think about the Lions, I think about that center position that they struggled filling the role of Frank Ragnow, who retired a year ago, and then tried to come back, but his knee, I believe was it a knee hyper or it was a calf, wasn't it?
Some lower body,
It
something.
was some sort of lower body injury. It was like a grade 2 pull of some kind that he wasn't able to come back. I think that center position. I think that you're starting to talk about the left tackle position with Taylor Decker getting older. I I don't know that I want to go pure left tackle because Decker's still around, and I don't know that Monroe Freeling that you can play him at guard right now. And I don't know that you will want to play Decker at guard either. So I don't know that Freeling will get play immediately right now if you're the Lions. But the thing is, I don't know that you want to go with a strictly guard like Vega Ione. I just think that you just kind of want a flexible dude who can play guard now and then play tackle. Or I think that you could either go with that or an edge rusher or corner. Corners, I don't really love at this point. Keldrick Falk, I don't really like that much as a player, if I'm being honest. Cassius Howell isn't really their type of player. Ben Johnson's not there. Would they go Kenyon Sadiq and just run two tight end and do some really funky, crazy offensive stuff? I don't know about that. I think I'm just going to go with Avion Terrell and keep trying to take shots here at cornerback. They've obviously struggled at drafting and trying to fill that cornerback position, cornerback one and cornerback two. I just think that Terrell's a really good player who I think is going to be able to stick around on this team and be able to play good football for you. And I don't think that anybody else up to this point makes a lot of sense. I think receiver, if you think about trading JMO, I know that there were rumors about that in this last year. I don't know that you do that, but I think if they did do that, that there are a couple of receivers that would be interesting. But I'm just going to go Terrell here. What are your thoughts on that as a Jets fan, Jack?
You mean as a Lions fan?
Or a Lions fan, not Jets fan? Yeah.
Yeah. If it were me, I would have taken Freeling all day.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the the signs are pointing to a Decker cut, um,
Mm,
which is tough because he has been so good for them for so long, but his cap hit is just so high and he is getting old.
mhm,
Um, the plan at center right now, as far as everything that we've heard, is that Tate Ratledge is going to slide into center, and then they're going to uh, they got the lineman in the trade with the Texans for David Montgomery. They've got
mhm,
some other guys that have played guard for them over the last couple seasons that they're just going to sort of
mhm,
go like, win the job. They will certainly assess it in the draft, I believe, as well. So I would have taken Freeling for the Lions in that situation. Also, I do feel turned off by overdrafting corners that it feels like they've done recently. Um,
mhm,
but that's my thought. But I'm now picking for the Minnesota Vikings instead, and a guy that is available that I think is actually going to be really, really good for them is Toledo safety Emmanuel McNeil Warren.
mhm,
Since Harrison Smith's heyday, They haven't
Mhm.
really had, and when he was there with Xavier McKinney, they haven't really had great safety play. They've had decent safety play at times, but not great. I think he's a guy that is going to be good. Um, I have a little bit of bias about Toledo defensive guys because their defensive coordinator just became Syracuse's defensive coordinator this offseason. But also, if you look at some of the talent that's come out of Toledo, they've had first round talent on the defensive side of the football come out recently. The most recent example being Quinyon Mitchell, who has been obviously a success. So I think that Minnesota needs to address their secondary, and so I like them taking Emmanuel McNeil Warren.
That's a good pick. I think that if Thieneman was there, that Thieneman would obviously make a ton of
Certainly,
sense. Yeah,
certainly.
both of these I think are really good safety spots. I would say. I think that man, I could see safety to the Vikings. I think being really straightforward for them. Mm. Now here with the Panthers, even though they didn't just make the playoffs, they did just win their division. It was obviously not a very impressive division in the NFC South. It was a division that the winner of the division did not have a winning record this year. I don't know that I like the Panthers roster that much, even with them making the playoffs and their offense having good stretches. Ike Ekwonu messed up his knee. Their running backs are not great. Their receivers, they have Tet, but besides that, they don't have a lot of good players. I legitimately think this is a best player available sort of situation for them. And I think Ike Ekwonu could move inside if you want to take Freeling at tackle. Or I think that Taylor Moton, who's getting up there in age, that this could be your right tackle of the future, or move Ekwonu to right tackle and have Freeling stay at left tackle. I think that Freeling, based on everything that's happened up to this point in this draft, this just feels like a good spot for him. I think that Tyson would be interesting. I think that the value is really good for Tyson as well. Mm. I just think for Bryce Young's sake, do we need to build up that offensive line or that receiving core more? I think that the answer is probably offensive line, so I'm going to go Freeland.
All right. I think that's the right call. I think between Tet McMillan and oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Um,
The dude with the accent.
yeah, he came out of South Carolina.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Uh, Leggett.
yeah, Xavier Leggett.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Um, I think that is good enough wide receivers for them to not feel the need to prioritize Jordan Tyson right now. Um, so I like that pick. All right, so now we're back to Dallas. Again, um, they already took C.J. Allen.
Mhm.
Getting that linebacker for them. Um, Surprisingly, all three of those safeties are gone already. I was kind of thinking that one of them would be available. If we sort of slotted down Thieneman to Minnesota, then the Toledo guy would be here. But he's not. So I'm thinking about edge, and I'm thinking about edge. The problem is I don't really like the sort of first round expected edges that are available right now. Like I do not
Mhm.
like I do not like Keldrick Falk. I do not like Cassius Howell. I don't like edges that don't produce in college. That's just, it
Mm.
was the reason that I was concerned about about Shamar Stewart last year. Um, So that said, I am going to go with an edge, and I'm going to go with one that has shown production and I think also has high upside, and that's going to be Zion Young out of Missouri. Um,
Ooh.
he's been rising up boards. It would not surprise me if he went this early, and if he went before Falk and Howell. Um, yeah, I don't love it, but my back felt like it was against the wall a little bit.
Mhm. I get you. I get you. It
And that
feels like definitely a defensive spot for sure.
and and if the board falls in the right way, that could be a place where you're looking to trade back a little bit. You
Mhm.
have a team that is like, say Buffalo is like, man, Jordan Tyson is still available, like we need to be able to get him,
Mhm.
something like that, some situation like that might be a spot that uh Dallas trades back a little bit.
Mhm. I get you. I have my Steelers on the clock here at 21. I I really really don't like taking quarterbacks outside of the top 10. Period, basically. And there's obviously only one quarterback that's on the board. He's projected down here at 42. That's Ty Simpson. I'm kind of warming up to the idea of Ty Simpson being the pick, but I know that the front office for the Steelers got scared off of quarterbacks at this part of the draft with the Kenny Pickett draft pick. Would I make the Ty Simpson pick given this board? Jordan Tyson being there has me salivating. Vega Ione, I think, will be an awesome pick too. Do I think that the quarterback is that valuable right now at this pick? Man, this is difficult for me. I think if I'm projecting through free agency, thinking that the Steelers are going to go with Kyler or with Malik Willis or somebody else, I just feel like I get the sense that they might go with a veteran and not go with Ty Simpson and just kind of potentially wait a year. If that's the case, if I'm projecting that, I'm just going to go Jordan Tyson here. I think that he's an incredible player. I think that he's a player that can win at all three levels. I think that he's a player, if the medicals come back pretty darn clean, that he could clearly be a top 10 player in this draft, top 5 player in this draft. I think that he's that good. I think that he's such a great prospect as far as what he is now. It's literally just the health stuff. But I would love having Jordan Tyson on my team. And I think that he's basically just too good for the Steelers to pass up on at number
Mhm.
21 here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. I think the idea of having him and DK Metcalf can be really, really good too. Um, yeah, I like it a lot. So now
Mhm.
here I am with the Los Angeles Chargers, and this one feels pretty obvious to me. Um, for one, I'm not going to do it. Uh, it is surprising that Kenyon Sadiq is still here. I feel like,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, it's got to be Ioane out of
Yeah.
Penn State here. Mekhi Becton, it did not work out. They've cut him. They I just saw this earlier today. They're signing Tyler Biotish to a 3-year deal at center. Um, so I think that yeah, I think that's pretty much that's it. Harbaugh loves offensive linemen. He
Mhm.
said it after they took Joe Alt instead of was it Malik Neighbors?
It
They
was
they
Malik
took
Neighbors. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and he's like, and they were all like, "Why didn't you take him?" And he's, like, offensive linemen can be weapons too, which is
Mhm.
just such a cool mindset.
Mhm.
But anyway, you need to get better up front. Like I understand the people that are like tired of giving Justin Herbert excuses, but that playoff game, I watched it. It was the day that my daughter was born. So I was in the
Mhm.
hospital room watching it. It was like he had no time to do anything with the football. Um, so shoring up that offensive line,
Mhm.
both in getting healthy, Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater getting healthy, and then also prioritizing in free agency Biotish and and then here getting Ioane since he's available.
Mhm. Man, I have the Eagles at pick 23 here. And I think this is the range that Kenyon Sadiq would be like, people will be trying to trade up for him at this point, like tons of teams. I think you'd be seeing like the 49ers, Sadiq would be incredible for them. I think Kansas City trading up from that number 29 pick they just got. I think the Broncos would make a ton of sense for Sadiq being that move tight end, that Joker kind of role that you just get the ball into his hands every time. Man, but I think that the Eagles just stick and pick and take him. I think that Caleb Banks is a really good player who comes from an SEC school, who's a big, powerful defensive lineman who makes a lot of sense. But I think that Kenyon Sadiq, he's just projected to be such a great player. I think that as an athlete, having another dude to be able to just get the ball in his hands, and Jalen Hurts doesn't have to sit there and think about it. He just throws it to him on a screen, gets him the ball, and Sadiq can make it happen. I think that he would just make this offense a little bit easier for the eyes, man. And I think Sadiq, like, you're just barely scratching the surface of what he could be right now. I think he projects to be such a great player. I just think Sadiq makes a ton of sense to this Eagles team here.
Yeah, I agree. And especially just to be like a flash in the pan for a team that had a really, really boring and uninspiring offense last year. Like
Mhm.
I think that just to get that, hit of adrenaline by having a guy like him is really good. Obviously, Dallas Goedert has been there for a long time and has been an important part of that team, but he's getting up there in age. It would not surprise me if Philadelphia moves on from him as well, and so getting Sadiq definitely seems to be the right call.
Mhm.
So now I'm back with the Cleveland Browns. Man, I've had all three teams that have multiple first round draft picks. Except you're about to have the Chiefs again, so you'll get in on the love a little bit. Um, I had them take Spencer Fano earlier with the number 6 overall pick. They have such a good defense. Um, that of course can get better, but I don't think that needs to be the priority here. Whoever their quarterback is needs to have reliable options and targets. I was really, really impressed by Omar Cooper Jr. this year out of Indiana um, for the Hoosiers, and so I think Cleveland's going to take him here. Um, Again, there are going to be a lot of really, really good wide receivers. I mean, we've already had 4 come off the board. Denzel Boston is still available. Casey Concepcion is still available. Chris Bell out of Louisville is still available. Like, there's going to be Jermaine Bernard out of Alabama. There's going to be good wide receivers in round 2, but I think it's important that you show that's a priority. And I think that's something that we don't always think enough about. If you think about the Green Bay Packers for all those years with Aaron Rodgers never taking a wide receiver in the first round, they did draft wide receivers. They did turn out well, but they never took one in the first round. And that's something that we still sort of look at as a way that they slighted him. So there does need to be, unfortunately, a little bit of optics put into that as well. And especially with a fan base that is always trying to uh, tell ownership that they're screwing over Shador Sanders, hey, go draft a wide receiver.
Yep, yep. For the Bears, I think that this is just a spot on needs here that PFF has. Very smart picks by PFF. D line, just defensive tackle or edge, linebacker and safety, basically the entire defense outside a corner. I think that there are 2 dudes that really stick out to me at this point. I think that Peter Woods would probably be more their style, but that Caleb Banks will be more my style of what I would pick. I think the more athletic player at this point in Caleb Banks, who's the cleaner prospect, even though he's had injuries, I think that a player that has higher upside, I would probably say, than Woods, who I just wasn't very impressed about, like a lot of players on that Clemson team this year. I just
Hmm.
think that if we're talking about Woods, that they drafted a Clemson defensive tackle to the Saints back when their defensive coordinator was the Saints head coach in Allen. And I think that they will probably lean more towards that scheme as a scheme fit, even though he didn't work out. I think that though Caleb Banks makes a lot more sense for what I would want to do if I'm the Bears defense. So I'm going to go Caleb Banks here.
Yeah, and I think if you're Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson and Caleb Banks is available there, you are grinning from ear to ear.
Mhm.
Um, that yeah, that he's there. So now we've got the Buffalo Bills. They just traded for DJ Moore from Chicago. They have needs all over their defense. And so with that, I think you're drafting the best available defender. PFF will tell you that's Keldrick Folk. You and I both agree that it's not, and so to me, that's Cassius Howell out of A&M. You want to talk
Mhm.
about production? He was very productive this last year. He had 12 sacks this past year. In 2024, he had 4 sacks, which is more than Shamar Stewart had in his entire time at Texas A&M, and that was his lowest season. He had 10 sacks in 2023, 4 in 24, 12 in 25. The knock that I have on him is I don't love his run defense production. Um, he seems more like one of those pure
Mhm.
pass rushing edges, not necessarily a do it all edge like we see from guys like Miles
Mhm.
Garrett, T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson. But that said, he is an edge and he is available, and so I've got them taking Cassius Howell.
Mhm. I think that's a really good pick. I think that they need pure pass rush, just somebody to get after the quarterback. Their run defense is not going to get any better with Cassius Howell, a
Mm-mm.
dude who played in the 230 range for his weight in the 230s, and a dude with very short arms, not very tall. Like, I think that he's a purely third down, like wreak havoc on third down sort of player. But that's kind of the player that the Bills need, even though their run defense isn't good. I feel that it's easier for the Bills to kind of mass produce that run stopping sort of front by just sending a lot of dudes at a running back rather than like having to produce a pass rush. They haven't been able to do that with a variety of players, but I think just a dude with pure speed who's able to get after it, Hell I think makes sense for that for sure. San Francisco. This is another team very similar in some ways to the Panthers, but better. I just think that San Francisco is a better version as far as has a more solidified quarterback, has a better head coach, doesn't have a lot of players that I like anywhere on this roster. Nick Bosa, of course, is good. He got injured. George Kittle's really good. He got injured. Like their receivers, all pretty darn good, all get injured or leave the
Mhm.
team or get traded. Weird situations. I think that this is a purely best player available sort of pick as well, outside of quarterback, obviously. I think that if I'm in the position of the 49ers GM, that I will probably go with Caden McDonald. I just think that getting a big defensive tackle who's going to be able to give one-on-ones to Nick Bosa on one side and to the edge rusher out of Georgia that y'all drafted last year, that just puts you in a better position where you can start getting back to that big defensive line like they had back in 2019, like they had
Mhm.
in 2024, three when they made the Super Bowl again against Kansas City. I just think that they're able to have a great offense or at least a productive offense with subpar players, but they needed great players on this defense along with the scheme that Salah left. And so I think you're going to need better defensive pieces that Kyle Shanahan's going to be able to supplement the offense. But you need some bigger bodies in there that are game changing defensive players. And I think Caden McDonald out of Ohio State's going to be able to help you out a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Especially, sort of like you were talking about, like who's the best guy that's available and gets you younger.
Mhm.
Um, okay, the Houston Texans. This is a team that I'm going to say now. My demand for them um, is that they need to be smart and draft offensive linemen. Um, there is there is a world where CJ Stroud really is bad. I'm willing to admit that world exists. But I also know the CJ Stroud that we saw his rookie year when he had time to operate and when he had healthy weapons. We can't guarantee that he'll have healthy weapons, but I like the idea of him at least having time to throw the football to subpar weapons more than him not being able to throw the ball to weapons that are the best of the best. And so with that, I also then want to take an offensive lineman that I think could be a little more versatile. And so with that, I'm going to take Caden Proctor out of
Mhm.
Alabama.
Mhm.
Um, there's talk about, is he ready for the NFL? Will he be a guy that, gets moved into a guard position? Who knows? But I think that has to be the decision for Houston. Blake Miller was there. I like Proctor a little bit more personally, but if they're in this position, the board looks like this, and they take Blake Miller, I won't fault them for that.
Mhm. Mhm. That's you make a very good point. The way you were talking about CJ Stroud throwing to subpar weapons, but at least having time. Obviously, you know where my mind hopped to was the old Joe Burrow meme when they drafted Jamar Chase, where it's like, would you rather have Jamar Chase streaking but Joe Burrow getting sacked? Or would you have Panay Sewell and then Joe Burrow throwing to a guy?
Right.
And looking back on that, both Jamar Chase and Panay Sewell would have been incredible picks. And if you could have
Yeah.
got both of them, you would have been winning Super Bowls by now.
Insane.
But Joe Burrow had to settle for Jamar Chase and not get Panay Sewell. And the Lions obviously lucked out with that. Caden Proctor is neither Jamar Chase nor Panay Sewell as a prospect, of course. He is not that
Facts.
good. And he is never going to be that good. But I think that he can be a good player at tackle or guard. He's a very Texans type of offensive tackle, too, where he's not just tall, but he is a thick human being. He is big, he is heavy, he is versatile. And I think that's kind of what the Texans like, too. So that
Mm.
makes a lot of sense, of course. I prefer Blake Miller personally, but I don't blame you there. Kansas City, I already made a draft pick for them. They had that number 9 pick. They had Ruben Bain, which I think was an awesome pick for them. They should have been stoked for that. They were stoked for that. I think that right now for Kansas City, they of course have needs on the offensive side. Their offense didn't look very good. I think that their offensive line's actually in a pretty solid spot outside of right tackle. I don't know that you draft Blake Miller. I think that he'd be a really good pick for them, but I think that they'd be able to manufacture a pretty good right tackle play at this point. And so I don't know that you. Hmm. I have my mind set on two different players, Blake Miller and one other dude. I'm just gonna let you in on the other dude that I'm thinking. The other dude that I have in mind is Jadarian Price, who I love. I love Jadarian Price, and I think he's a great player. I do think it's a tad bit rich in the late first round for him. But man, do I love Jadarian Price. I think that if Kansas City, I believe they have a second round pick, like 15 picks after this. So I think they probably could just draft him there potentially. So I think probably if I'm Kansas City, I go Blake Miller here and hope Jadarian Price is there at their pick. Let's see. Can I see what are Kansas City's other picks? Well, let me see. Well, it doesn't show remaining picks because we're only
We're
doing
just
first.
doing a first round.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Blake Miller and hope Jadarian Price is there in the second round and be able to get him there. I just think that tackle's obviously more valuable. And Blake Miller, I think you just start him day one at right tackle. I think that he has left tackle flexibility too, being a long, tall, athletic dude. And so I think that if you had issues at your left tackle position, like last year with injuries and off the field issues with their rookie
Hmm.
left tackle, that he'd be able to slide over there as well. But I just also love Blake Miller as a player. I think he has a ton of starts. He's a good athlete. He has really good measurables. I just think that he's plug and play right tackle day one for Kansas City. Awesome player to me.
All right. Well, your wish is not going to be answered because the Broncos are
No,
taking Jadarian Price.
bro, that's
Woo! You
crazy.
had me sweating when you were talking about that. Um,
That's
uh,
crazy,
the
crazy.
Broncos need to upgrade at that position. Unlike last year, where we were looking at running backs and we were like, there are active roster depth chart worthy guys that will be undrafted free agents. I do not feel that way about the running back class this year.
Mm-mm.
And so because of that, I'm I yeah, I mean Nick Singleton like is a word like a worthwhile and Katron Allen are like names worthy of mentioning. I think both of them would have been better off coming out last year when they were much better. There's just not the same depth at that position. Jamal Haynes,
Mhm.
and then again, I'm talking about guys that are day three guys that you're like, ooh,
Mhm.
okay, that you can see that working. Um, but I think that Denver is in too much need at that position to to wait, and so I think here's a prediction that I will make for the draft. We will see Jadarian Price get drafted in the first round, and we will
Mm.
say that positionally it is an overdraft, but you can't afford to wait.
Mhm.
Like it's I feel like running back and wide receiver have like flipped this year in terms of guys that it's like, ooh, these are good guys. I mean, looking at the wide receivers we still have left: Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard, Skylar Bell, Chris Brazel, Elijah Surratt, Zachariah Branch, Dion Burks, like Malachi Fields, Antonio Williams. Like it keeps going and going and going.
Mhm.
Where you just pulled up the running backs and that was not the case.
No,
Um,
no, it was not.
so so I think that Denver is going to prioritize that here. They do have a second round pick. We'll see what linebackers are and defensive linemen are available for them when it gets there. Because if the drop off from Jadarian Price to whoever's next is from here to here, but the drop off from Rodriguez out of Texas Tech and the next guy is from here to here, then you want to make sure that you prioritize
Mhm.
what is going to be harder to get. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
so anyway, they're taking Jadarian Price.
That's crazy, man. Literally, like I had to go over to the other side of it, pull up running backs, and be like, him. And you were like, just poor
Yeah, I was just
man.
like, I'm
That's
not going to say
crazy,
anything.
man. I think both of these dudes are awesome players. Like, I'd be so stoked if my team had a pick in this range and I was able to get either of these players. They're both awesome. I like. There was a stretch where I was like, is Jadarian Price just better than Jeremiah Love? I don't think that. But for a
I don't.
moment, I was like, huh, is it really that crazy to say? It's a little bit, it's a good amount crazy, but I
Yeah.
really do love Jadarian Price for sure. The New England Patriots, they obviously have needs on their offensive line. They drafted an offensive lineman last year at pick 4. He did not work at tackle. They're going to try him again at tackle. Good on you, Mike Vrabel, for trying to make it work. We will see how that goes, sir. They could use guard or tackle and have flexible dudes and move those dudes around. What are we looking at for the O line? Let's see. Pregnon, Basantis, both of those dudes are interesting. Offensive tackle, Ikanor, Inekor. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I really like him. I don't think in the first round quite, but pretty soon. TJ Parker just screams Patriot to me. Somebody who I think can rush the passer, who is a really good athlete, who I think can do a little bit of everything. Falk, I just don't like Falk that much. You're getting into good value range for him. Colton Hood, I think, is a good player too. Peter Woods as well. But I think the need at edge rusher combined with the player who he is makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go TJ Parker here at 31 to the New England Patriots coming off a Super Bowl appearance.
I think that's a good call. Which then leaves me with Seattle, and I'm going to take Colton Hood.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have some expiring contracts at corner, as well as it's very clear and obvious that they're so tired of Tariq Woolen that there's a chance that they don't even try to bring him back, despite him being one of their starting corners on their Super Bowl winning team. Um, so I have them taking Colton Hood. All right,
Mm,
Nick. Let's
that's
let's talk about this just briefly.
yes.
Um, let's go with let's each give our favorite pick the other person made, and then
Mhm,
our sort of maybe a little bit more of a head scratching pick that the
mhm,
other person made.
mhm,
Um, I will. I'll go first for you with what the pick that you made that I thought um, was the most head scratching. Um, that one for me is probably Avion Terrell, um, just because I feel like it's certainly a reach, and I think he's a first round talent. I don't know that he's middle first round talent, um, and I think there were still some guys like especially with Freeling still being available that I thought made more sense.
mhm,
Um, Again, when we're doing this, we're nitpicking, right? Because
mhm,
but I that one was surprising. Mansour Delane to the Giants was a little surprising to me.
mhm,
Um, I understand not going with Reese because of the abundance of riches that they have, in that edge
mhm,
slash outside linebacker
mhm,
position. But I thought maybe Caleb Downs, the
mhm.
Harbaugh has always had really, really good safety play
A
between
good.
Kyle Hamilton and Ed Reed. So I thought maybe that Downs would go there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, what about you? Which pick did I make that you were like, ooh, that's a choice?
Hmm. I guess I'll go with. I guess I'll go with Zion Young. I just have not seen him up this high. I just don't know that the Cowboys would take this edge rusher in this spot. I think that probably if it were me, I would have gone Cassius Howell, just because I think they have such big bodies on the defensive line already at defensive tackle, and they got three of those dudes. And now they have the linebacker that we took at 12 with CJ Allen. And I think that with that your run defense is good. So you can afford that instead of having a bigger body like Zion Young, you can have a pure pass rusher like Cassius Howell. I just think that he fits that kind of role better as somebody who's purely a quarterback pressure kind of guy when you're able now to defend the run at a lot higher level with your personnel, I would say. So I think I
That's fair.
probably would have gone Cassius Hell instead of Zion Young at that point, even though,
That's
of
fair.
course, he has his questions about his measurables. But that's just kind of my feeling there.
Yeah. Pick the pick that you made that that I thought was the best pick. And obviously there's multiple ways to, go about that. Like we had some guys fall that it's like, oh, well, that's the best pick that you made. And it's like, well, yeah, anybody that would be able to get that guy that late in the round, like that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But that said, I really, really liked your um I really, really liked your pick for the Dolphins with Jermod McCoy.
Mm,
I think that's a fit that just makes a ton of sense.
mhm,
Um, getting a corner like him that is as experienced as him, and getting him there. He's
mhm,
probably a guy that if he performed at the combine, we're talking top five. Maybe not. Maybe we're talking second round. Because he doesn't perform well, but I
mhm,
feel like all signs point to he would have performed well. We'll see what he does at Tennessee's pro day, like what he does in terms of the times that he puts up and what he does in terms of literally what like how many things does he participate in. We'll see that here soon. But I really really liked that pick to the
mhm.
Dolphins there.
You had a lot of picks that I really like, Jack. I gotta just shout out a couple. I'm gonna go with one of them, but man, there were a lot that I really loved. Where I really loved getting Colton Hood at 32. Like that, he's just an instant starter at cornerback two for them. I think that he would be an awesome outside starter since you have the slot obviously wrapped up with Witherspoon. I think that Caden Proctor makes so much sense for the Texans. I don't know that I love him as a player, but I know that he will be a perfect fit for them, and I really like that. I think I'm going to go with Vega Ioane, though. I think that he's just such a Charger. Big, powerful, clean prospect. Immediate day one, you just plug him in, and you just have center that you signed, tackles that, if they're healthy, they're awesome. And then Ioane at one guard. And then you just have one spot you got to figure out. And I think that just somebody who you don't have to sweat about at a position that you really need. It's just so clean. It was so easy. Like, you didn't even have to say. We just saw the board and we're like, him.
Yeah.
That's the and it was just too perfect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this was a ton of fun.
Mhm.
We are 6 weeks away from the draft. Actually, we're probably technically 7 weeks away from the draft. It's Friday, March 6th as we're recording this. So yeah, seven probably. But still, we've got a lot more work to do before the draft comes. Last year we went through and we did sort of going 2 divisions per week. You know, post the free agency period after free agency opens, and of course, you know, free agency will open and there will be guys that get signed in June, but you know, the main first window after that opening, what we think teams biggest needs are in the draft, we'll be doing that you know, coming up here. And so yeah, it's a fun time of year, you know, this time when we are doing this, combing through film and stuff like that to prepare ourselves for the NFL draft here. We're a month and a little bit away, so that'll be really fun. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you think. Do you like the decisions that we made for your team? You know, let us know in the comments what was good, what wasn't, what your draft dreams are. You know, what you're hoping happens for your team. That's probably the most fun part of this year is dreaming about, you know, what your team is going to be able to do. So yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in and for supporting us. Have a great week, everybody.
Sweet.